This is Justin.
And this is Haley, and you're listening to The Price of Avocado Toast.
We're a married millennial couple wanting to normalize conversations about money. We want to hear about your highs and your lows,
The do's and the don'ts on your path towards financial freedom. Hi, Toasties. Welcome to Price of Avocado Toast.
Whether you're a first-time listener or you've been following us from the start of this thing, we're so glad to have this conversation with you today.
Speaking of which, we have a lot of new listeners, like a lot of new people just now tuning in. So this episode's going to be kind of a recap on some of the stuff that we've gone through over the last year as like a mindset, like complete shift. But if we have someone who is totally brand new and doesn't know our story, can you give them like the quick synopsis? Is that the right word?
Yeah. Synopsis. Yeah.
There we go.
We had a lot of money. We spent it all and got into a lot of debt, up to like $200,000. And just about a year ago now, we sold the home that we owned to pay off a lot of debt. And we moved away from where we were living to your hometown. So that's kind of our story.
That was really good. That was nice and
I
quick.
mean, there's obviously a lot more, right? Like, we obviously now have a podcast. We have kids. Like, there's so much more that goes into it. But that's like the nitty-gritty, I guess.
Yeah, and because we had a lot of money and then we had no money and then we paid off a lot of debt, I feel like we've been on all angles of things, if that makes sense. Like, we were all the way over here and then we were all the way over here, and now we're kind of like floating around in the middle. And alongside all of that comes just the shifts of how we think about money. And there have been some massive shifts for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, financial literacy's not it's not quite linear, right? Like, you get information, but you're continuing to get information, adapt and change for what works for your family. And so once we got on the path of like being able to identify where to get information and find those avenues, I mean, obviously, like, our mindset's going to change as it slowly morphs and develops into us really honing in on what we want for our lives and for our family, including our finances.
So this weekend, we went back to Santa Rosa, where we just moved from a year ago. And I can't believe it's been a year, but it's been a whole entire year that we've been here. And we've visited throughout the year, but for some reason, this was like emotionally different to go back this time. And I kind of wanted to talk about all of that. And we were in the car on the way home, and I was like, gotta record a podcast about it because we had so much to say. And I feel like a lot of people go through moves and big changes to pay off debt. And alongside those things, you have the shifts of your emotions. And it's not just the action of like, okay, we did this. There's a lot more there that we had to go through.
It feels like we made a change, and it was a great change. And it's, obviously till now, it's been a really good change for us. But it felt like this time going back to visit, almost like it became a little bit more real. I know that's kind of weird to say, but the big thing would be that we drove by our old house while we were there. We hadn't gone by in a year. We had always kind of said, like, oh, we should cruise by the old house and, like, see how it looks, see what's going on. But this time we actually did drive by.
And let me just say, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. I posted about that on Instagram, and a bunch of people flooded my DMs saying, "Ooh, yeah, I made that same mistake." Don't do that to yourself. You see a house a certain way, and then to see other people in the house, whether it's like the yard or just seeing other people in your house playing or whatever, it's just different.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not something I wanted to see.
No, and we had talked right after we like drove away from the house that, like, that's an important part of our story is being homeowners, because that's where I proposed to you. That's where we brought our first child home to. That's where we started to build a life together. And so thinking of it as like not our home anymore, but still driving down the same street that we used to take walks on with our daughter, and like looking at the same driveway that we parked our cars every night, and the bedroom window that was ours, like, it's a big switch, and it's emotionally jarring to like go by the house.
Yeah, for me it was like we put so much love into the house.
Yeah.
And then to see other people having it be their home in a different way, not the way I wanted it to be, was hard because it was like that was the yard that I loved to garden in and make pretty, and all of a sudden it was ugly. So
Yeah.
that was really hard.
Yeah, and we did a lot of maintenance investment to sell the house,
Yeah.
right? To make it look, like some curb appeal. And obviously, whoever purchases the house, like they get to make the decisions of what happens with that. But to see it in the condition it was in, it kind of felt like, oh man, like it's a house to them, not a home.
Mhm.
And it was like, oh, like don't treat that place like that. Like that place was home for us. And so it was weird. One of the good things was the next door neighbors, their house looks great.
They're the best
We
people.
got these super cool neighbors like 3 months before we moved, and they were really kind. They own a landscaping business, so they're just like doing all of the work possible. Like they've repainted and they redid the driveway. They cleared out all these gross trees, and it just looks tremendous. So if you're somebody that is still in our hometown, and I guess my hometown, and you want to like drive by our old house, you can see the house next door and be like, that does look really good.
One thing that I think is different is like I think of the house that we're in right now, and this is it feels temporary.
Mm-hmm.
It's my mom's house. We're renting it from her. This is her rental, but I have zero desire to go make the yard look nice. I don't really care to plant a garden.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care to make grass live. I don't care to do anything but the bare minimum, which sounds kind of lame, but I think going from owning a home and walking in and being like, okay, I want to paint everything. Let's make this mine. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
first thing I did in our home was paint it. You went to work and came home and the wall was painted bright blue, and I
Yeah.
was like, yes, now this is mine. but here it feels like because it's not ours, I'm like, well, I just don't really care. I don't have that
Yeah.
same love towards it. So it's definitely hard going from the homeowner aspect of like, yes, this is mine. I'm going to customize it. We're going to live here. It's going to be a home, our home, to just another house. And it does feel homish. You know, we have all of our stuff here. We brought our second child home here. But I know that it's not forever. So it's definitely different. And then to go buy the other house, I was like, okay, it's really different.
Yeah.
It was a trip. And then we were talking as we were leaving, and I was like, it's kind of crazy to think we sold our house to pay off our student loans, and then we didn't do that.
Yeah.
So then you can spiral down the, well, why'd we do that? Why did we even move if we made this massive sacrifice to sell our house to pay off student loans that we chose to not even pay off anyway?
Mm-hmm.
What was the point? But there have been so many positives that have come from it, and we just have to kind of talk through all those and remind ourselves of all of the good things that have happened. And if we didn't sell our house, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I think we're in a really good spot. It's just really crazy when you think of all of the things that happened because of that one choice to sell our house.
Yeah. And along with that does come the mindset shift that we've had over the last year. We wanted to pay off debt. We wanted to be debt free. We obviously also, wanted to lighten our spending, and where we were living was going to be really expensive, and we were kind of getting phased out as two teachers, potentially one not even returning to the classroom, and we weren't going to be able to afford childcare. So it was like, okay, what are we going to do? We have to make a move somehow. And moving here was the right choice for our family. And with the equity we had in our home, we were able to do a lot of really great things from the start. Like, build our emergency fund, build our sinking funds, put money away for student loans. But then our mindset changed. And it's okay. I want the listeners to hear, like, it's okay if your mindset changes as you get more information.
Mm-hmm.
Like, our information that we got was student loans are still on pause and there's no interest on them. I'm a teacher who's now working with a certified student loan professional who's telling me, hey, as long as we fill out this paperwork and they continue public service loan forgiveness, you're in the clear. So let's do this paperwork together. And instead of paying off your student loans because they're such a low interest rate, let's look at starting some Roths for you guys and investing that money instead so that you're earning some money. Now, I say that as our market is, dipping right now and having some issues, but we're long-term investors and that's what matters most, right? But I really want people to understand, like, it's okay to change your mindset when you get new information. A year ago, if you would have told me that that's what I would have done, I would have said you're crazy. Selling my house. I'm paying off all my debt. I'm never living with these burdens anymore, right? But now I'm like, okay, well, let's wait and see what Mr. Biden does. Let's wait and see if I am a teacher for 10 years and can get the service loan forgiveness. Who knows? Maybe I'm not a teacher in the next 7 years and things change. Again, your mindset can always change, but it's really fascinating to look back and like you said, to look back and think, man, was it all worth it? And I struggle because I have to remind myself, like, yes, right now it was worth it for my family. Right now it was the right choice. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I do know that it was the right choice for right now.
There have many things that have come from it. And I made a reel a while ago talking about like the one decision to start this podcast has led to so many different things.
Mhm.
But it kind of goes like the one decision to sell our house led to so many different things. I honestly think had we not sold our house, if if we were to have babies 18 months apart, you would have had to quit teaching and go find an $80,000 a year job. Like
Yeah.
there's no way we would have been able to afford a mortgage plus $2,400 a month with childcare. It just wasn't going to work.
Nope.
Your take home pay when we were living in Santa Rosa was about $2,400.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. Like, would we have even had a second child so soon? Would we have had to wait until they were in kindergarten? And that's one of my biggest whys for wanting to get financially literate because I don't want to have a bunch of kids, but however many kids we have, I want to be able to have the kids, have them as close in age as I want, and not have to have that stress that literally everyone I know is dealing with. This is not some weird thing, but of the childcare aspect.
Mhm.
People have to family plan according to, like, does the mom go back to work? Can we afford this? What's gonna happen? Do we have to move and be closer to grandma and grandpa so we can have free childcare?
Yeah.
There are so many different things, and I don't want to have that burden. So that was one of the huge parts of us moving. We were able to have another child so soon because I really wanted them close in age, and then my whole entire business wouldn't have been a thing at all if I had to go back to teaching. So there's just so many positives that have come from it, but it's definitely easy to go down the rabbit hole of like, well, why'd we do this? Was this worth it? If we said we were going to do all these things when we sold the house and then we didn't. Well, along with that is that we decided it wasn't necessarily what we wanted to do right then and there, and that's okay. Our student loans eventually will get paid off one way or another, whether we pay them off with money from the house that we still have or we pay them off with our new investment property that we bought in Michigan. Another thing that wouldn't have happened if we didn't move. You know, there's so many different moving parts that have changed and I think it's okay. It's okay to reflect and kind of wonder. I know that you miss being near your brother and your family. I miss them as well. I really miss my friends. And it's easy to go home and visit and be like, "Ooh, was this the right choice?" Well, there's also a lot of good things. So it's okay to kind of have the mixed emotions of being like, "Okay, I'm sad, but also I realize this is good right now."
Why do you think people don't take that like big step or like that big jump? What do you think typically holds people back?
Comfort. Like it's terrifying. What we did was really scary. I'm genuinely like still shocked that you agreed to do this. Cuz like I said, like I would move anywhere anytime.
Mhm.
Um that's just I've moved a lot in my life. But that's where you were born and raised. That's where all of your friends and family are. So
Mhm.
it's a really scary unknown thing to do. I think that's why people don't leave. But then I also see people fleeing California left and right because they can't afford to live here anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think it usually comes down to like either a fear or finance thing,
Mhm.
and at some point the finances like just overcome the fear because you're like the math doesn't add up right now. Like again, my take home was only $200 more than our mortgage. Like there was no way we were gonna be able to manage that. And I love being a teacher, but I would have had to go get a second job or a better paying, original job. And I'm educated as a teacher. That's my career path. So I was just thinking, like it feels like it comes down to one of those two, either fear or finances, and at some point the math just does not add up. And that's a thing that our economy is dealing with in general, right? Like that's not just specific to where we're at. You're seeing it everywhere now where people are not able to meet basic needs. Like it's very scary when you look at some communities and what's happening. I think it's absolutely terrifying, and I do not like the outlook for our nation with how things are going.
No, 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 not at all. When we, this is another thing that trips me down that rabbit hole of like, why do we do this? We thought we were moving to a lower cost of living area. Haha. And then inflation came and just ruined everything. And we had this false idea of like how much money we needed for a budget because we really went heavy in on our budgeting during COVID. And so everything was so slimmed down because we weren't going anywhere. We weren't driving the car. We were not hanging out with friends. Everything was just not really existing. So we we got by with the bare minimum. And so then we thought, okay, we can move somewhere that's a lower cost of living, it'll be cheaper, and then all of a sudden we're spending like $1,500 to $2,000 more than we were when we lived in Santa Rosa a month because of inflation. And it just, that's what gets me being like, wait, was this cheaper? We're spending more money. I mean, and I know that that's not because of our move. That's the way that the world is right now. But we're spending more money this month on gasoline for our vehicles than we are on food. So it's just different. And it's easy to be like, oh, I thought we were going to get a break. And then all of a sudden, we're spending $300 more a month on food.
Yeah, when you don't actually see the break, you're kind of like, well, what the heck? Why did this happen?
Right.
Yeah. I think obviously beyond the finance portion of it and seeing the home, it was an emotional trip because we had a really, really fun time with my twin brother and his wife. It was her 30th birthday party. We had a really great time. Bless our daughters, they're wonderful, but they did not come along for the trip. And so we got some really quality time with people that we love and care about. We got to see one of your former colleagues who has a 2-year-old daughter. Before this other birthday party, we got to go and see them and celebrate their daughter's birthday as well. So we really kind of just got time with people that we love and care about without having to play parent, which is like I love being a parent, right? But actually just having some time away was really nice. And so I think that was another reason that it kind of was like, oh, like why does this trip feel different?
Mhm. Yeah, it did feel different without our kids because every time we visited has been with the kids. And it's always great and all, but you're still chasing them around and
Mhm.
being mom and dad and really not fully able to sit down and enjoy your friends and family's company because you're still preoccupied, which is just a season of life that we're in. But it was nice to kind of get a break for a night and be like, okay,
Yeah.
wow, these are the people that I really miss. Hi, nice to see you. I know I saw you last month, but I was paying no attention to you because I was chasing my kids.
Yeah. People, when we had mentioned that we were going to move and that I was kind of like hesitant and worried, right? People had reached out last year on Instagram saying, like, it's a good choice and, like, he'll be all right. Justin will be all right and stuff. I have been all right. Like, I've managed it relatively well, I think. It's gotten easier as the months go on. But it's still really hard for me. Like, every time we go back, just driving through the towns and getting to my brother's house and being around him in close proximity, like it's really hard. It's really difficult. And this time was probably one of the harder ones for me. Like I didn't get as worked up emotionally like I did the first few times we went because it was still so raw then. But it was just like everything I kind of want in my life. And it felt really good, and then we get this like massive reality check right away of like, oh wait, we're priced out of this area. This is not a reasonable place for us to try and, find a home one day because homes are going way over asking for all cash offers, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah, the home that we would have wanted in Sonoma County when we moved would have been like an $800 an $800,000 house, and now all the houses around here are like $800,000 houses, and the houses in Sonoma County, like the ones that we would want, are like 1.2 million,
Yeah.
and that's just not. I mean, 800 is not doable.
No.
1.2 is outrageous. So it kind of seems like we had this idea that we could move somewhere else to go buy a house cheaper, and then all of a sudden the houses are $400,000 more than they were a few years ago when we were looking. So it's like, well, why not just go buy a house over in Sonoma County and drown if we're just gonna drown here anyway?
Yeah.
It's just spiral. And the whole reason I wanted to do this episode is because there's a lot that we are kind of discovering and unpacking as we're continuing on this journey. And it's not all peachy and rainbow. It's not like we just moved and everything's perfect. We're still trying to figure out like where we want to be and how we want to live life and who we want to be near. And there's so many different moving parts that we still have to sort out. And I think that it's a really good thing that we're in a rental right now and that we didn't go buy a house immediately, because we get to really figure that out. And you said last year when we announced that we were moving and we went over all of the logistics and stuff, which, by the way, if you're new, go listen to those episodes. It was terrible. But you were saying if I can do anything for a year. And you did.
Yeah.
And now we're still trying to figure it out, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think the final point that, I wanted to talk about is just the thing that I mentioned with like the oppositional pole between my work here
Yeah.
and home. I teach at a school that gives me the freedoms that every single educator dreams of. I dress how I want, I can speak how I want, I can teach how I want about what I want to teach about. Like, I have every freedom possible, and I get to make big changes in the classroom because of that. Like, we have hard conversations, and we talk about difficult things, and we confront social justice issues, and I get to learn from my students as well as I grow in my own discovery of, the global issues that I want to learn and explore. And there's just not schools like that out there. And so I have this really hard pull of like, I miss the heck out of where I'm from, but I love the work that I'm doing here. Like, I love my campus. I love what I'm doing. I am one of very few educators this year who has still had a good year. Granted, I had some times that were not that much fun, and I was like, oh, this is really hard. I don't know if I want to do this forever. But I still do love where I work. I love my administrator. And so I'm struggling because I still have that very real pull of like, if I'm not teaching here, I don't know if I'll stay teaching. If we were to move somewhere, whether it's back to Sonoma County or somewhere else, I don't know if I'll stay teaching because I'll never have a situation as good as it is here. It's like the opposite of that idea of like the grass is always greener on the other side. It's like, well, actually my grass now is really, really, really green, and I don't ever want to go to the other side.
I mean, it literally is a dream.
A dream.
A dream. And I imagine that is really hard. Just knowing, like, I don't know of any other school that is like that. And it's not even just the school, it's the principal and the support. You have such a sweet gig right now.
Yeah.
And it'd be kind of stupid to leave that.
Mm-hmm.
Because then similar to me being a financial coach, I mean, I don't know if you could pay me enough to go work for someone else at this point. Like, unless I have to, obviously. I would. If it got to a point where I had to go get a job, I would. That's not what I'm saying. But being in a position where I can make money and I can see that my hard work equates to money, and I can work harder and make more money, and no one's telling me what to do, makes me really never want to go back into a classroom ever again. So I imagine that you being like, well, I can literally do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And why would you leave that? I get that.
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
And it's hard because I obviously loved where I worked. I have opportunities if we were to ever move home to Sonoma County. Like, we have so many friends that teach, and we know so many people that are on campuses that it would not be hard for me to find jobs that are going to open up and people that are going to put in a good word for me. But again, those places are just not quite where I'm working right now. And I don't know if I want to leave somewhere like this. So I'm really struggling with that pull because I miss my brother so much. Like every day I have thoughts of like being around him and our girls being around one another and you know us growing with their family and having family dinners with them. And so to not have that is really hard. But then I also do sometimes think about like, well, what if I were to leave this campus? And I left my last job that I was, a former student of. Like I was shocked I was even able to have that conversation. And this campus is even better than the last one. So the thought of like having those conversations at some point down the road, I'm like, I don't know if I want that. Maybe I do just want to teach here forever and retire out from here and make it work. So we have all these crazy feelings and all of these like weird, irons in the fire that are kind of like figuring it out, and we couple that with the big money changes that we made, and it's just been one freaking heck of a year, dude.
Yeah. And then I think like, okay, now I know about finances and what's a smart move and what's not a smart move. And buying a $1 million house is a bad financial decision. So I look at like, okay, is it like financially more feasible to rent forever, even if it means that we go rent for $3,000 somewhere? I mean, in the end, we'll spend less money than buying a
Mhm.
$1.2 million house. So there's just so many different things that we're thinking so differently. I thought we were gonna move, sell, move and then pay off all of our student loans, and then buy a house in a year or two. And that
Mhm.
is just so not going to happen. We bought a house in Michigan. I don't see us personally, if someone were to say, when are you guys going to buy a house? I don't see us buying our own home for probably like 3 or 4 years.
Oh, at
So
least.
now it's way further out because I think I don't want to do what we did in Santa Rosa where we stayed somewhere for 4 years. I
Mhm.
want to be somewhere for a really long time.
Yeah.
And so if that means we have to rent and sort that out or stay here because we get free childcare from my mom, and although it's not like full-time childcare, it's worth a lot.
Beneficial.
It's a lot of help. Like anytime I need to go do something, I can just say, "Hey, I need to go to the chiropractor. Do you mind watching our girls for an hour?" And she's able to do that. So that's hard when that's free.
Yeah.
It's invaluable at this point. So there's so many different factors that are pulling at our hearts. And I just wanted to get on the record and have this conversation for our family to sit down and listen to how we feel, because they have all these thoughts about like where they want us to be, but I don't know that they really know how we feel about it and
Mhm.
all the sides and the feelings that we have from all different perspectives. So I wanted that. And then also, I know a lot of people right now are tossing up selling their houses because the market is so hot.
Mhm.
They know that they could do kind of what we did, and in one shot, one big financial move, they can pay off all of their debt, fully fund an emergency fund,
Mhm.
and get set up for either the next house or whatever that next step is. And I'm seeing it left and right. People are like, okay, I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to sell my house. Just know there's a lot of things to think about. I don't
Mhm.
regret what we did at all,
No.
but it's just funny having the trip that we just had. A lot of feelings came up that I didn't think were gonna come up. I felt like, oh, I'm okay moving, but Sonoma County, I've moved so much my whole entire life. I lived in Sonoma County for 10 years,
This is the
for
longest you've ever
almost
been
12
somewhere,
years.
right?
Yeah, it was the longest I'd ever lived in one single place.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily the same house, but I was in the same town and the same county for over a decade.
Mhm.
So that's a really long time. I think that's why it was kind of hard for me more than anything.
It's understandable. Again, I like what you just said about, like our family being able to listen to this because we do have family members who listen and are toasties since day one. And, I do want them to hear that. Like, it's hard to vocalize everything in the ways that we feel. And maybe we don't do justice to the fact that obviously we miss them. And we have friends back home that, like, I want them to hear, like, we miss them. It's not like it's been all sunshine and roses, like you said. Like, we've felt isolated at times. We've lost some friend circles, and those are things that we enjoy in life. And so we're juggling and balancing it all. I guess I just want people to understand or feel as though like their thoughts or their feelings are validated just as we feel the same. Like it wasn't like we moved away and we're just like sick, awesome. We got all this money to do emergency funds and stuff like there's a very hard emotional trade-off that came with that. And like I hope people understand that those that we love and care about in our family and friends and also just our listeners in general. Like that was a hard freaking decision. Very hard decision.
Yeah. I was so pregnant and miserable when we moved
Yeah, you were.
that I couldn't wait. I could not wait to be out. I wanted nothing to do with that house. I was done, done, done. It was the worst process. And I said I'm never doing that again. It was absolutely terrible. And being paired with being really pregnant and then you went back to work. There was just a lot that I was like, okay, I'm just going to like put all these emotions away and not deal with it right now because I have other things to deal with. I have to solo parent with my husband 4 hours away, and then I am, trying to grow a human. Like it just was a lot. And it's funny because now I'm like, ooh, I feel all those things that I didn't process last year coming up.
Well, we didn't have time to process it.
No.
Like we had a baby coming right away. And I think maybe that's again why this trip felt a little different because now we do have the time to process it. Our baby is getting more self-sufficient. Her and her sister are playing a little bit more. We were able to get away for an overnight and we drove by the house. And so we're having the time now to grieve and to process it. And we're not just in like go mode. Because a lot of parents mention that, right? Where they're just like, dude, you kind of just like wake up one day and they're 5 and you don't know how the F you got through the last 5 years, right? And it feels like it's kind of that where it's like, oh, this is real. And we got to sit with that and think about that. And now we have 2 others beyond you and I that we have to think about what's best for them. And yeah, like you said, just like now we're processing it because we didn't have the time then, and it's a lot. I think it's also the fact that like summer's coming up, and so like we're
Yeah.
gonna have time away from me at work and like time as a family together and stuff. And so again, we just have more time on our hands, and with that time comes unpacking all of the feelings and whatnot that came from it.
So, what do you think the future looks like? Like, if someone asks you now, where are you going to land? Do you genuinely have no idea?
I genuinely have no idea, but I know what I want.
What do you want? And I'll tell you what I want too, because it's so funny that we've done a lot of reflection on all the things that we want over the last year. Like,
Yeah.
where do you want to be? What do you want out of life? What does that look like for you?
In a perfect world, I'm gonna go into a perfect world setting.
Okay.
I want to own a small bit of property, with 2 homes on that property, one of which is our home, one of which is my brother's home. I just can't. I can't imagine living life like this forever.
You want to be able to throw rocks at his house
Yeah.
from our kitchen?
Yes. I mean, I can do it for a year. I can do it for a couple years.
Yeah.
I can't live the rest of my life 150 miles away from my twin. And I don't think people get that. Like, people are like, oh, I'm so close with my sibling. Like, no, you're not. No, you're not. I mean, you are. I shouldn't say that. That's mean. Like, yes, people are very close with their siblings. You're not me and my brother twin close.
Yeah, you guys are
We are a different breed.
you would happily live right next to each other and work at the same school and coach football and be with each other from sunrise to sundown for the rest of your lives.
You could not have mentioned a better scenario than what you just mentioned. Like, seriously, like I don't know. A lot of people are like, oh, that's cool. Like, don't you guys want separate lives? No, I don't. Like, no, 1,000%, absolutely not. Like, yes, I have a separate life in that, like, I have my own wife and children, and I would like to not live in the same home, right? A separate home would be nice. But, like, beyond that, like, no, the dude is my best friend. like he's the coolest human being I know beyond you. So
It's okay. He came first.
yeah. So why would I not want to surround myself with that?
Yeah.
I just pure happiness all day long. Wow, what a bummer.
So you think like of the people.
I always think of the people.
Yeah.
I would live in a 2-bed, 1-bath if it meant, it's around the people I love and care about. And I get that the financial decision we made was the best thing for us while raising our young daughters. And if that changes in time.
I'm not saying that I don't love all of the people. I love my friends, love the family,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, it's not the people that's in the front of my mind. And I think that does come from having moved like 50 times in my life. I know that no matter where I'm at, I'll make friends, I'll be good,
Mm-hmm.
I'll find that community at some point. So that's not what I think of. I think of like I can envision the house that I want to live in. I could draw it for you. I know exactly what I want it to look like. And I want it in a neighborhood with sidewalks because we don't have sidewalks here. And I want the sidewalks that you can put the stroller up.
Yeah.
The curved sidewalks. I just have very specific things that I want, which are so funny because I don't know where this happened. It's always for me been the opposite of how I grew up,
Mm-hmm.
and the opposite of where Grass Valley is not it for me, and it never has been. It's very much in the middle of nowhere, and that's not where I want to be.
Mm-mm.
I want to be near things and people and stores. I don't want to be a 10 minutes drive, 10 minutes in gas to go get Starbucks. That doesn't do it for me. So there's a lot more to it for me than just the people.
Yeah.
I want to
that's
be
fair.
like in a certain environment.
So what I'm hearing is that, in Sonoma County, that might be a little bit more money. So the Toasties need to share our podcast with their friends, so this just blows up and can monetize. We can monetize this with ads, so that we just have this great passive income and can live wherever we want.
That sounds really great.
Looks like I've cracked the code.
Yeah. So basically, if you guys share our podcast with all your friends and family, you will help us become really rich, and then we can buy that $1.2 million house.
Love it. Love it.
With sidewalks.
Perfect. The perfect sidewalks. Toasties, thank you guys for just letting us talk through this. We've had obviously conversations of our own about it, but it does feel nice, I think, to kind of get it on record, so to speak. And we're kind of slowly building this like life catalog through this podcast that's going to live in the interwebs forever. And there's going to be someday, just like we look back at our wedding video, there's going to be someday, whenever we're no longer doing this podcast, where we can look back to these like, these lighthouse episodes and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, I remember that. And the interviews are great, and we've met such tremendous people, but it's moments like this where down the road we're going to be able to be like, I remember when we took that trip and saw the house, or I remember when we retold our story, or when we got the new microphones and whatever, right? Like I don't know, we're building this little, album of our life on a podcast platform. So thank you guys for letting us do that again today.
You think our kids will ever listen to our podcast?
I hope they do.
That'd be a trip. The first episode, I haven't brought myself to listen to our first episode, but I keep thinking about it, and I think I really need to do it. So I think we should listen to our first episode and record us listening to it.
I think what we should do is we should do like a really funny like Instagram live. I'll play it on my phone on like the Beats pill, and we can all listen together, and we'll pause it and talk about like what were we thinking. It'd be so funny. We should play a Friday night over the summer drinking game of listen back to the first episode with us, and like, okay, every time we mention Dave Ramsey, you have to take a drink, and every time we say the word baby steps, you have to take a drink. Every stutter or every loud noise in the background, gosh, that'd be fun.
Oh yeah, that's when everyone told us that we need a date. not be in such a big room because
Yeah.
the echoes were so bad.
Thanks for all the feedback.
It was
guys.
great feedback.
Yeah, you've made this podcast way better.
And now we have an editor who can
Woo.
fix all those sounds, like my
Yes.
Apple Watch just going off. Let me know if you guys heard that.
That's going to do it for this episode of Price of Avocado Toast. As always, we are so thankful to have had this conversation with you guys and so grateful to be part of this community. Happy budgeting.
You've got this, Toasties.
Thanks for listening to the Price of Avocado Toast. If you vibed with this episode, share it with a friend that you're comfortable having money talks with. And if you don't mind, we'd love if you could rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you're in need of my support as a financial coach, message me on Instagram. I'd love to help in any way that I can. Until next time.